It was a cold, quiet night in April 1912. The sea was calm. The sky shimmered with stars. On the deck of a magnificent ship, people laughed, talked, and watched the waves glisten beneath them. They felt happy. They felt safe. That ship was the Titanic, the largest, most beautiful ship the world had ever seen. People called it unsinkable. Some even whispered, not even God himself could sink this ship. The Titanic wasn't just a vessel, it was a dream of progress, of power, of human pride. Inside, the wealthy dined under chandeliers, dressed in silk and confidence. Down below, families in third class smiled with hope, believing this ship would carry them to a new life in America. For everyone aboard, the Titanic was a promise, a symbol of strength, modernity, and safety. But that night, something cold waited in the dark, silent, deadly, and unseen. An iceberg, and within a few short hours, the greatest ship in the world would disappear beneath the sea. More than 2,200 souls were on board, rich and poor, famous and forgotten. But when the Titanic struck the iceberg, they all became the same, afraid, cold, and fighting to live. This is not just the story of a ship that sank, it's the story of dreams, of courage, and of tragedy. April 14th, 1912. The Titanic glided through a calm, glassy ocean beneath a sky full of stars. The passengers slept peacefully, unaware that disaster loomed ahead. At 11:40 p.m., two lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, stood high in the crow's nest. They had no binoculars, only their eyes. Suddenly, a dark shadow appeared before them, a towering wall of ice. Fleet rang the warning bell 3 times and shouted, "Iceberg, right ahead!" On the bridge, First Officer William Murdoch reacted instantly. "Hard to port! Full reverse!" The ship began to turn, but too late. A scraping roar echoed through the night. Metal tore against ice. The Titanic had been struck. The iceberg ripped open her right side beneath the waterline. Seawater flooded the lower compartments fast and mercilessly. At first, few noticed. The music still played. People still laughed. But deep below, Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, studied the damage. When he returned to the bridge, his face was pale. He told Captain Edward Smith quietly, "The ship will sink." "It's a mathematical certainty." Smith stood frozen, then whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Andrews," and began to act. Distress signals, lifeboats, order and chaos colliding. But there were only 20 lifeboats for more than 2,000 people. It wasn't enough. Women and children first. That rule was clear and cruel. Fathers kissed their families goodbye, whispering lies like, "I'll see you soon." Mothers refused to leave their husbands until crewmen pulled them away, tears freezing on their faces. At first, many still refused to believe the ship was doomed. "This ship can't sink," they said. Some even laughed nervously. The first lifeboats left half empty, but as the bow sank deeper, fear spread like frost. Water poured down the grand staircase. The lights flickered. The music softened. And then, as if to calm the terrified hearts around them, the ship's band began to play. "Nearer, my God, to Thee," a hymn rising above the screams, a prayer whispered into the night. In the lower decks, chaos reigned. Locked gates trapped poor families below. Some men broke through with bare hands to save their children. On deck, the cold was unbearable. The sea swallowed everything it touched. Amid the terror, heroes appeared. Thomas Andrews kept helping passengers find life jackets, refusing to save himself. He was last seen standing alone in the first-class lounge, staring at a painting as water rose around him. Captain Smith walked the deck one final time. He gave his last command, "Be brave, men," then returned to the bridge and was never seen again. Benjamin Guggenheim, the millionaire, dressed in his best evening clothes and said quietly, "Tell my wife I've done my duty." He sat down, calm, waiting for the end. By 2 a.m., nearly all the lifeboats were gone. The Titanic tilted high, her lights flickering once, twice. Then darkness. A thunderous crack split the night as the ship broke in two. The stern rose, then plunged into the sea with a roar. Screams echoed across the water. Then silence. The Titanic was gone. More than 1,500 people floated in the freezing black ocean. Their cries faded one by one until the sea was still again. In the lifeboats, survivors sat motionless. Some prayed. Some just stared at the horizon. Margaret Molly Brown urged the sailors to turn back. "We must help them," she cried. But fear stopped them. The lifeboat would sink if it grew too heavy. She wept quietly, whispering, "God help them." Hours passed. The sea was endless. The night colder than death. People huddled together for warmth, holding strangers' hands, trying not to feel alone. Then, just before dawn, a faint light appeared. The Carpathia. Captain Arthur Rostron's ship had raced through icy waters after hearing the Titanic's distress call. At 4:10 a.m., the first lifeboat reached her side. Frozen hands helped each other climb aboard. Blankets, hot drinks, gentle voices. Doctors tended to the wounded. Crew members wrapped shivering children in coats. Every survivor was met with warmth and care. As the sun rose, the ocean turned silver, calm, empty. Nothing remained of the Titanic, only drifting debris and the quiet of the sea. 4 days later, on April 18th, the Carpathia arrived in New York. Thousands waited at the docks in the rain, searching faces, praying for miracles. Some found their loved ones and wept with relief. Others collapsed in grief when they did not. That night, the richest and poorest stood side by side, united in sorrow. The world was stunned. How could the unsinkable ship sink? Investigations began in both Britain and America. Witnesses spoke of locked doors, half-empty lifeboats, and heroes who never escaped. Hard questions followed. Why weren't there enough boats? Why were warnings ignored? The answers were painful: arrogance, pride, and blind faith in human perfection. But from tragedy came change. New safety laws were born. Ships would carry enough lifeboats for all. 24-hour radio watches became mandatory, and the International Ice Patrol was created to guard the Atlantic. Yet hearts took longer to heal. Families mourned. Children waited for fathers who would never come home. Survivors carried the memory like a shadow. Some never spoke of that night again. Others shared their stories so the world would remember. The Titanic had been a dream, a symbol of progress and pride. But its fall taught humanity a lesson. No ship, no invention, no human hand will ever be greater than the sea. Today, the Titanic rests deep beneath the Atlantic, silent, broken, yet eternal. When explorers found her in 1985, the world fell silent once more. Rust and ruin, chandeliers covered in sea dust, each piece telling the same story of courage, love, and loss. Because the Titanic was never just about a ship, it was about people. The musicians who played to calm the frightened, the engineers who stayed to keep the lights on, the mothers who kissed their children goodbye, the strangers who shared blankets and hope. In their courage, we remember what it means to be human. The Titanic reminds us that pride can sink, but compassion floats. That even in the darkest night, humanity's light refuses to go out. And though the great ship sleeps beneath the waves, its story still drifts above them, carried by every heart that listens. because some things, born of love and courage, can never truly be lost. If you liked this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.